everybody. It's actually great to see so many of you here tonight. Thank you all for coming out. Faces I recognise and some I don't, so it's nice to see some people I know from old councillors and various others here, so it's good to see you all. Following the success of the event held at Reesdale Hall, well, it was successful because we had lots of people.
How many?
And we were asked to do some already.
How many? And how many names were written down?
I haven't got the names, and I haven't got those names with me. I don't think the idea was not to take names at Reesdale Hall. It was an open event, so anyway, we've listened to what everybody was saying. You said you wanted more questions to be answered, and so we've organised tonight's event. 4 questions that you submitted, and we've got the team to answer for you. So we're showing we have listened to you, and we've got a lot of repeat questions, so we're not going to be answering every single one that came in. And we're holding the event tonight. I know it felt like it was a bit of a hurry, but we're doing that because we're going to be in pre-election period from tomorrow, which means the councillors would not be here with you to listen to this tonight. After tomorrow, I mean, sorry. So that's why we've got it on this date. We are trying to rush it, but we want to get it before the pre-election period where councillors would not be able to be out in public. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Rob Reed now, our CEO.
Thank you, Julia. So yes, as you're probably aware, Police and Crime Commissioner election is coming up soon, which is the pre-election period that Julia was talking about. So welcome again, some faces I know in the audience and some I don't. I'm Robert Weir, I'm Chief Executive at Cotswold District Council. Good to see you all tonight. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So firstly, as you'd expect me to say, there's no fire drill planned. We're probably in the safest place if there was a fire, but there's no fire drill planned. So if the alarms do sound, Hannah, who is currently in the reception area, will come through and will follow Hannah out. I'm sure you've probably worked out where some of the toilets are already. If you haven't, then you need to be accessed through those doors or more quickly through these doors and just round to the right is where the nearest toilets are located. You probably noticed Kirsty, one of our communications team. Kirsty is filming and recording audio of the panel. So again, by popular demand, we wanted to make sure that anybody who wasn't able to attend tonight, but who would like a copy of the recording, is able to hear how the conversation is taking place. So Kirsty isn't filming any of you. You'll be pleased to hear she's just filming the audience in front. So we provided a handout of the questions. As Councillor Lakin alluded to at the beginning of this session, there's a range of questions that have been submitted in advance. The reason for those questions being submitted in advance is because it allows the team of officers to identify some of those groupings of questions. So unsurprisingly, lots of people have raised questions about housing numbers, lots of people have raised questions about infrastructure, lots of people have raised questions about sewage, for example. So that grouping of those questions will enable me, as the question master, if you like, to read some of those questions out, to put them to the panel, and hopefully answer the questions that the majority of you have got. We've got a written copy of all those questions, and we'll put those in boxes at the front so you can take those away. And we are allowing 15 or 20 minutes, depending on how we get on time-wise, to take questions from the floor as part of this session. So, and again, the reason we're putting that at the end of the session is because you may well hear answers to some of the questions you've had throughout the evening. So in terms of the panel, I'd like to introduce, in no particular order, I'll go from right to left, got Councillor Angus Jenkinson, at the end. Some of you know Angus is one of the ward councillors. Councillor Juliet Layton, who's a planning portfolio holder. We've then got Matt Britton. Again, many of you will know Matt, and James Gray, who's one of Matt's planning colleagues. And we've also got Charlie Jackson, who's the Assistant Director for Planning and Sustainability, who's joining us tonight. And then at the end, last but by no means least, Councillor Darryl Call has joined us again as one of the Moreton councillors. So we've got a great panel tonight, and the plan will be that when we go into questions and answers, I'll primarily be aiming the questions at Matt and James, but I'll be asking if any of the other panel want to come in at any point. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the questions. So we'll try to respond, as I said, to a broader range of questions as possible. I will read the question number when I put the questions to the panel, which might seem a bit strange, but it will then allow you to identify which questions have been asked when we circulate the questions at the end. So again, I know this is quite a hot topic, and I know there's lots of interesting stories and information being circulated on social media and in the press. Hopefully what you'll hear through the conversations and the presentations in particular is some of the facts about the local plan. And I'm hoping that we'll also be able to do a bit of myth busting. So there's lots of housing numbers that are being circulated, which isn't what's being consulted on as part of this local plan. So I do want to make sure that Matt and James are able to cover those and give you the assurances of some of the numbers that we're talking about as part of that local plan consultation. And the other one, just to set out as well, again, I've seen questions, and I'm sure there'll be some tonight, around infrastructure. Now, clearly, we will be looking to work with county council colleagues and others around that infrastructure provision. It goes without saying that you can't do any form of strategic planning without having conversations around infrastructure. So I just want to reassure people in the room tonight that infrastructure is an integral part of the planning process. And I'm sure through the questions and also the presentations you'll hear a bit more about that tonight. Can I also ask, please, that you do respect the speakers? It's important that we do these public events, but please, no heckling, no talking over each other. Let the panel take their questions, because ultimately we're here to provide information for the majority of you. So I will interject if I think things are getting out of hand and look to move things on, because it's not fair to the rest of the audience if we're taking out time or that you're not being respectful to the panel. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Matt who will give a 15-minute presentation now on the key aspects of the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. Okay, well, just want to give a short presentation really, just to set a bit of the context about this local plan consultation, because I know not everyone will be familiar with town planning, and yeah, just want to give a bit of a background information. So, essentially, local plans they provide a long-term strategy for meeting the needs of an area, so things like homes, including affordable housing, employment, shops, open space, and infrastructure, things like roads, schools, leisure facilities, that sort of thing. So they are used to, the local plan is used to help determine applications as well, so they get assessed against the local plan. So having a local plan is really important because essentially it helps to coordinate development the supporting infrastructure. It also helps to avoid developments in places that you really don't want them. So having a local plan in place, saying where development is going, means that when you get these applications in places that are unsuitable, you can refuse them. It's also really important to have a supply of housing over the plan period that you're looking to do. And also it's really important because it commits some of our infrastructure providers, such as the county council or the Thames Water or people like that, to deliver infrastructure in a timely manner. And really, really importantly as well, it helps the people to get involved in the planning process and genuinely help to shape the area that they live in and contribute. So, for Moreton-in-Marsh essentially, the two main things that we're consulting on at the moment is the local plan update for the adopted local plan. So we've got an adopted local plan already. We adopted that in 2018 and it's doing a good job. But we've been tasked with making the local plan move to the core, essentially. So that's responding to the climate change and the ecological emergencies that the council is declared. The local plan period at the moment, it runs up to 2031, and it sounds like a long time, but actually we need to start thinking already about future development beyond that. So we're all ready to start to think about how what development will be needed and how it's going to be delivered up to 2041. So that's the second part of this local plan update and consultation. So this local plan that we've already got, just want to explain it very, very high level. I mean, there's lots and lots of policies in this local plan, but just a few of the key things that we've we've introduced 2 new chapters on sustainable development and climate change mitigation and adaptation. So that's going to include a whole new design code, new policies on how we can get health and well-being delivered more from developments, and how we can deliver climate and ecological enhancements for developments. There's also policies on things like renewable energy, and we get schemes like that submitted, how they're going to be determined, things like retrofit of buildings and how we can ensure that. There's already a policy in here on flood risk and water management. We've really beefed that up in the consultation to make sure that when development goes ahead, it's not in locations that flood or cause flooding. And there's also we've really improved the green infrastructure and sustainable transport policies as well. So that, for example, development is located close to places where it's got good transport connections so that people don't have to use their car all the time. Also really important to us, a key council priority is delivering affordable housing and genuinely affordable housing. So we've already got a local plan policy in here, so when we get a big development on a greenfield site, we require already 40% affordable housing and 30% on a brownfield previously developed site. But we want to increase that to 40% on the brownfield site and 50% on the greenfield site. But lots of different things in the policy initiatives that we're doing to try and boost affordable housing delivery. We're also introducing a new policy so that when developments do take place, based on existing records, there'll be a 10% biodiversity net gain. That is really going to help improve nature in our district. But also on the economy, we've got lots of employment sites in the district. Unfortunately, we have been experiencing a situation where quite a few of those get converted to housing developments, and we really want to make sure that people living in our district have jobs and they don't have to travel elsewhere to go and access their employment. So we're trying to protect those as best we can, and also create conditions so that new employment can be provided in suitable locations. So we also we have these settlement policies in the local plan as well. So 17 principal settlements. So we've also updated those, but particularly for Moreton-in-Marsh, and there's a proposal for Fire Service College, and that's also in here. We'll come on to discuss that a little later. So, in terms of the local plan that we're looking for up to 2041, so this is effectively it's a new local plan, and although we've done a lot of work on this adopted local plan and the policies, this new local plan that we're looking up to 2041, we're right at the beginning of the process of that. So we're just having the opening conversations essentially, and that's what this consultation is about. So just to reiterate, we're in a strong position at the moment with our local plan. We've got a healthy housing land supply, and we're in a good position to do a new local plan. But unfortunately, that's not going to last. We've got lots of people telling us we need to deliver more housing, and we need to get a plan in place now so that we can make sure that we've got plan-led development. So the new local plan that we're doing is looking at a plan period from 2026 to 2041. And we know, based on what the government tells us, the number of homes that are needed in the district, and we also know how many houses are already in the in our adopted local plan and sites that have got planning permission aren't completed yet. We know that it's somewhere around 3,300 houses extra to find by 2041, to be delivered by 2041. And that's across the whole district. In addition to that, there's lots of other things that we'll have to plan for as well. So new employment, shops, infrastructure, green spaces, various different things. So that all forms part of the local plan. And what this consultation really is about for the new local plan is, well, one, how much is required and what's required, but also how we distribute that requirement across the district. So the local plan consultation document, it includes 8 options for how you can do that. I'd encourage you to have a little bit of a closer look. And there might be more options as well, so if there are additional options that you can think of, let us know and we'll have a look at that. But we have looked at the plan and we've done it, and these 8 options that we've come up with, we think that from the evidence that we have available to us at the moment, we think that the combination of these 8 options is probably the best way of doing that. So in our adopted local plan at the moment, we have these 17 principal settings, which we've assessed to be the most sustainable locations for growth in the district. And it's worked pretty well as a strategy for delivering what's needed so far, and the proposal is to continue that on into the new local plan. So there's also, it's really important that we reduce our carbon dioxide emissions, and one of the big generators of carbon dioxide in the district is transport. I think it's 45% that accounts for all of our carbon emissions, and it's still going to be difficult to deal with. So what we want to try and make sure is we don't make that any worse and we can improve it when we can. So what we want to do is make sure that where new growth does happen, it's focused around locations that have really good transport connections and access to employment, services, facilities. That means that people aren't going to need to use their car quite so much. So in addition to that, we also will come on to discuss this more, but we have a sight and sound system that's already got planning permission. It's got 2,350 houses, 9 hectares of employment land, big site. That's already going to be part of our development strategy for the future. So we know that's going to be looking to be completed sometime in the 2030s, so that's a big part of it. But we've kind of find this additional 3,300 houses, and we've got a good idea around the district of what land's available, what land might be suitable for development, and we think that probably, from where we are at the moment, and with the evidence that we've got this available, around 1,500 dwellings might be located in Moreton-in-Marsh with supporting infrastructure and other things like that. So, with the principal settlements as well, we know as well that some of them might fall away as principal settlements because the sustainability of the change over time. And not the facilities that we want to have.
Could you speak up, please?
Sorry, I did ask, yeah. I'll try.
You're going speaking fast.
Sorry?
Quietly. You're speaking too fast and too quietly.
Thank you for that. I'll try my best. Okay, so importantly for this local planning consultation, nothing has been decided yet. So this is, like I said, this is very, very early stages. So at this stage, we're just consulting on ideas for the 2041 plan, and we're looking at solutions about how we can fix problems essentially. We also need to, before we make any decisions about what the future development strategy is going to be, we need to consider the feedback from this consultation that's going on at the moment. And we're hoping that people are going to make some really good points to us and give some head scratching and some things to go look away and consider further. So importantly, we're also after any alternative solutions to where future growth can occur. And in addition to that, before any decisions can be made about the future development strategy, we also need to commission further evidence. So, for example, if 1,500 houses are going to go in Moreton-in-Marsh, we know that, for example, probably a new road is going to be required. That's going to require a feasibility study. We're going to have to look at the viability of it all. We're going to have to look at the sites and whether they're deliverable or not. So there's a lot of additional evidence that needs to go into it before we can actually get a firm decision on, okay, this is the development strategy. Finally, I just want to talk about the actual how you can respond. So we need to get responses in writing. That's how you make a local plan consultation response. Now, we've set up a whole website, your.cotswold.gov.uk, where you can do that. You can find out all of the information about the consultation, and you can take some surveys and let us know your thoughts. If you're really keen, you can also get into the detail of the policies and go through them. Long document, but we've tried to keep it a section of it quite high level, and for you to do a survey on. If you want to get into the detail, you can do that as well, and let us know some of the specifics of the policies, particularly on this update to the local plan. But if you have any problems with using the website, you can always come and talk to us, and we'll help you to do that. But yeah, also you can of course write letters and email to us with consultation responses, and we'll also take that. So right, that's the end of my presentation. I've just left a map of Moreton-in-Marsh on the screen, just to help the discussion today. But we're going to move on to the questions and answers now, which is what we're here to discuss. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Matt. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you to the gentleman at the front, because it's hard for us to hear the speakers at the back, so please do let us know if you struggle to hear us. So Matt's very helpfully then given an overview, and I think, as I said at the beginning, I'll just take a moment to look at the numbers. So Matt referenced approximately 3,300 dwellings out to the end of that plan across the whole of the Cotswold district. That's significantly less than the numbers I've seen bandied around in various social media posts. Now, I wonder whether part of that, we'll come on to this, is reference to garden towns and garden villages. Now, garden villages are technically smaller strategic developments up to around about 3,000 to 4,000 homes, up to. Garden towns take that level on to up to approximately 10,000. So I wonder whether part of the myth busting that we can start with is we're talking very much at this point around garden village scale developments, and I've come out to that point of 3,500 homes across the whole of the district and 1,500 or so in the Moreton area. Now, as we'll come on to some of the questions, the reference to garden villages is not in any way to set out a direction of travel that is always a large number of dwellings. It's more around the infrastructure and connectivity that a garden village or a garden town, but let's focus on garden village because that's the numbers we're talking about here, is developed. So typically it comes with all the things that I know a lot of you are concerned about. It's around the infrastructure, it's the planning, it's the layout. And in essence, if there's one thing I would ask you to take away from the session tonight, it's that the garden village process talks holistically about how do you create a settlement with everything that settlement means, rather than an ad hoc approach, the incremental approach, which is where you see developments occurring on the edge of towns, and it's very much more ad hoc, where particular developers are taking an opportunity to develop a site because there isn't a clear plan of structure. So I just wanted to emphasise that before we go into the questions. So one of the things which came up was, will CDC representatives provide a summary of the feedback they collected from the consultation at Restore Hall? The answer to that is yes. And as you heard from Matt, this is a live consultation, and we will be capturing the information that was shared with us on that day. But I would urge anybody that came along to those events or from this event tonight to log onto the website or to send an email to the team or to write to the team, setting out and summarising your views and concerns. The very best way of making sure that's collated is if we've got that written evidence. But the short answer to the question is yes, the team will be collating that information. That will all be then part of the local plan consultation process. Will there be a written or audio record of the meeting held tonight? Yes, there will. So Kirsty is doing that. As long as the battery holds out, we'll be then able to post that on our website and provide that to you. So as I said at the beginning, I'm now going to run through a few questions that we've pre-grouped simply to try and make sure that we're covering some of the key questions from those different areas around infrastructure, numbers, and the other various concerns which we know we've already had raised. So one of them, is this a garden village, or is it simply a huge expansion of North East and therefore not to attract government funding for design, etc.? So there's questions there. Garden village should be characterised by social and cultural vibrancy. This specifically describes a garden village as separate from other settlements, and hopefully as part of my preamble I've made you aware that we are talking about a garden village approach and not garden town. How many houses are planned to be built in East Moreton Garden Village by 2041 and beyond? And again, we've heard from Matt's presentation the numbers, we're talking around 1,500. And the reason I say around is not to be in any way secretive, but it could be slightly more, it could be slightly less. But those are the levels of numbers that we're talking about at this point in time. A question I'll put to James and Matt is, has any work been done in looking to develop Cotswold or Bledington to take advantage of the proximity to underutilised train
Slow down
stations?
a little, talk a little louder. We're missing about
You're
one
talking
word
down to
from
the
Foster.
table.
Sorry.
Slow.
Has any work been done in looking to develop the Cotswold and Bledington areas to take advantage of their proximity to underutilised train stations as a garden village? And if not, why not?
I can start with that one. I mean, yes. I mean, we know, starting with Bledington, Bledington is in the Cotswold National Landscape, formerly the Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. So we know in national policy it tells us you cannot locate the scale and extent of development in the Cotswolds national landscape. It has to be limited. You can't have major development there unless there's an exceptional circumstance for it. Kingham, which is next to Leggington, that's actually in West Oxfordshire district as well, so that's outside our authority. With Kemble, yes, we've also looked at Kemble. We've got various evidence studies that look at that. So, for example, we've got a document called the Strategic Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment. It's a bit of a mouthful. Essentially, that starts off by asking anyone and everyone what land is available for development, and then we look at what constraints are on that land. Even just with the exercise of asking what land is available for development in Kemble before we've begun to work out whether it's suitable or not, we know there's far less land in Kemble that's available than in Moreton-in-Marsh. On top of that, we know that Kemble is a village and it's got very limited facilities compared to Moreton, and that means that people are going to get in their car and have to go and access things like when they go to the supermarket, when they go to the secondary school, all those sorts of things.
Thank you. Can we just listen to the answers, please?
Give correct facts then.
So, secondary school might have been a bad choice for example. I apologise. I appreciate the people in Moreton have to get to Chipping Campbell and so, in addition to that, we also have landscape studies that have been done, and yeah, that's all available on our website. That information.
I think I'd like to, presumably you can hear me okay? Right. I'd like to bring you all back to one of the slides that Matt sort of brought up right at the beginning, and about the sort of the purpose of this consultation. We're asking for your views on how we should be distributing growth in the district between 2026 and 2041. We have a legal obligation to do this. It is right, it is moral, it is the right thing to be doing for planning for the future. We know what happens in places like Moreton, Tetbury, other places where we get speculative developments happening, where it's uncoordinated, where it is a deli ticket, who can get to that ticket first. What we're trying to do here, and we're putting something out there for you to sort of give us your thoughts on, but at this stage, tell us your thoughts, your ideas on how we distribute that growth. We've given you a sense of where we think the evidence is going and where it's pointing towards, but we've gone no further than that at this stage, because that would largely be a fool's errand. You could spend hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not more, on preparing a plan. And if we did that and then presented to you, you're completely within your rights then to say, this is a fait accompli. What we're trying to do is to say, we have an obligation to do this. We're trying to do this 7 years in advance of this current plan, sort of closing. We think and we believe there are opportunities to locate more growth in Moreton. What are your thoughts? We're getting some ideas of some of those thoughts already through the questions, and that's great. But if it isn't Moreton, where should it be? How should we do it? And also, one of the things I'd like to leave with you this evening, and they're almost something to my concluding point, too early possibly, but have a little think about how you would like to see Moreton, how you imagine yourself, your children, your grandchildren in 15 years in the future. What services and what facilities would you like them to have? What would you like to have? Sometimes it's going to be a bit of a crystal ball, we appreciate that, and it's going to be a bit iterative, but this is your opportunity to help support the District Council to plan and coordinate development, infrastructure and communities for the future. So I just want to...
Thanks, James.
Can I just add one further?
We've got lots of questions to get through, so let's carry on moving through, otherwise I think we might spend lots of time talking about I'd rather come back to a few of the points at the end if we can and get through some of these. So the next question I want to raise is East Moreton is a special landscape area as defined on CDC's own website. what considerations and protections have been or will be afforded to the developer by CDC in the planning process?
Yes, I mean, special landscape area is a constraint to development. It's a really important designation, and yeah, we have to balance these things when we're looking at strategic growth. Yes, there's things that you can work into developments with the design of them, but it's something that is important that we need to take into consideration, and it has to feed into the balance of issues when a decision is made.
Yeah. I've got nothing else to add.
Thank you. The next one, and you may have to explain the integrated impact assessment for those who may not be familiar with it, but who authorised the changes to the integrated impact assessment for the Cotswold local plan update by AECON without informing CDC councillors or members of the public?
So it was me. I authorised it as the head of service. The reason for that is plan making is an iterative process, and we're allowed through that process, if there's a fundamental error or there's a change or a tweak that can be made through that process, we can make that live. So we felt, or I felt, that it was important to rectify and slightly change, correct, shall I say, an error with the integrated impact assessment. Just picking up on Rob's point, what is an integrated impact assessment? By law, we have to prepare a sustainability appraisal to support the local plan. So this is an environmental assessment that assesses the environmental credibility, I suppose, of the document. In law, we have to prepare what's called an appropriate strategy. It used to be the most appropriate strategy, so that was a higher test when we're doing, but ultimately it acts like a sort of a check and balances on the local plan, and it gives you as residents confidence that we are applying the full force of sort of environmental law when preparing these plans. The beauty of the essay, and we technically don't need to prepare one at this stage, but what we do find is that the earlier we start that process, the earlier then you can start to see some of our thinking and sort of the process as well. But it helps us to iterate the local plan, and the earlier we can do that, the better. So it's sort of as one goes forward, the other one checks, and then one goes forward. So it's quite a useful process to support the district council, and ultimately an alighting on a sensible, robust and legal development strategy.
Thanks, James. And I will, as we get through these questions, ask if any of the panel members have anything to add, but again, I would ask in the interest of brevity, making sure we rattle through your answers are short, sweet, and add to what we've heard rather than repeating. So the next question, Joe Harris, leader of CDC, continually and vociferously talks about the Council's green credentials. In the light of the green agenda the Council has adopted, how does CDC's claim of being green sit with the proposed plan for Moreton-in-Marsh, specifically in relation to building on areas of A and B, environmental issues such as flooding from runoff into waterways and the impact on the already high water table in this area, air pollution, already a problem along the High Street and A49 and A44 in the town, pollution of the waterways, currently the sewage facility is not fit for purpose, and the massive increase in car usage, assuming an average of 2 cars per additional dwelling for commuters and people shopping or accessing leisure and other facilities. Large developments of houses by major developers who do not build eco or environmentally friendly houses, not always heat efficient or use solar energy, etc., etc. I look forward to a full response. So there's quite a bit there. Matt, do you want to start us off?
Okay. Like I said in my presentation, one of the things we can't do is build in the Cotswolds, in the Scotland. Can't put major development in the Cotswolds National Landscape. So I know to the west of Moreton-in-Marsh, that's all located in the Cotswolds National Landscape. Proposal isn't to develop there. We know that is all very highly constrained. Also, in terms of making it green to the core, we have to locate development closer to services and facilities and employment to cut those transport and emissions. So that's part of an integral part of the strategy that's proposed. Also, you know, developing this much housing across the district, it does provide housing, particularly affordable housing for young people especially, who really struggle to live and afford a home in our district. And essentially what we know is the reality is that people have to live elsewhere where it's cheaper, and they have to commute in or drive to go and see mum and dad or their friends, and it's not really fair. So yeah, we're trying to sort of improve that situation as much as we can. I mentioned in my presentation about you know, a new policy for 10% biodiversity net gain as well. It's really going to help wildlife in the country, in the district. Yeah, there's new policies. Oh, sorry, biodiversity net gain. Yeah.
So biodiversity net gain is a national policy, in fact, but we've replicated it at a local level to give a local flavour to it. But it now requires, well, certainly from the 1st of April, all major and non-major development to contribute to the improvement of nature. So not only does it have to mitigate the impact that it has on nature, but it has to improve it by 10%. So those can be through financial contributions, on-site, on-site sort of mitigation, or they can buy credits at a national level, and that can be there. What we've tried to do in the policy is to try and keep that as local as possible. But we are operating in what is effectively a national sort of legislation. Rob, would it be okay to?
Yeah, so I'm really keen that we keep the questions to the end.
It's very quick
We
question.
will answer the questions. You must answer the question because you're focusing on biodiversity net gain. The sewers.
I'm going to come, don't worry sir, I'm going to come back, I'm going to push the officers on the elements around sewage, air quality, and the comments that were made about how do we stop a big developer coming in who might not necessarily have the right credentials or the green credentials that we're all after. So James, quickly, air pollution, flooding from runoff, sewage, how's that going to be tackled as part of the planned developments?
So essentially what we do have is the purpose of a local plan is very much to set out those criteria, those rules, the policies which then a developer has to abide by. So in terms of pollution, there is a pollution policy. In terms of, that would include air quality. We have flood policies in the local plan, and we're making changes to that to sort of, again, further enhance the protections and improvements to sort of reduce flooding either as a result of the development, either in its construction or long term. But ultimately, it's the collection of policies that seek to ensure that development is delivered as sustainable as possible and address those issues. Now, if there are issues with development, then enforcement can be taken on that. There'll be additional conditions on that. The challenge we have with flooding and infrastructures, not all of that is within the gift of the district council in terms of the planning regime or even the environmental health regime that it operates in. And it works on the goodwill and also us working with statutory providers, whether it be the county council or the Thames Water or whoever it is, the Environment Agency. So it's a collection of organisations, and often that's where the frustration, I can well imagine and completely understand as local residents, comes from. But it's important to know that in terms of what the council can control, it's doing everything that it can, and it's even making changes as part of this green to the corners, because we recognise the changing nature of the environment, the increasingly warm environment that we have and wetter weather. But I can't stand here and tell you, don't worry, the council's policy will sort it all out, because it's a multi-disciplinary and also agency matter. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up, because I think I'll use Chair for if I can, just to explore part of that a bit more. So I was talking at the beginning about the benefits of the garden village approach, allowing you to have far more of a proactive approach to infrastructure. Now, new sewage treatment systems is clearly an important part of infrastructure. So is it fair to say that as part of a garden village proposal, collectively, there's an ability to lean on the Severn Thames Water, the Environment Agency, and developers who will ultimately be delivering this to say we need new sewage systems, and as part of this new development, we would want to see an upgrade to those existing systems. Because I think that reflects that garden village approach where you incrementally get that. So James, just give us a bit on that.
Yeah, that's it's a really fair point. And I think, again, the point of having a plan is to sort of try and coordinate those activities. And I think when you have the principles of a garden village coupled with a local plan, you're then presenting a proposition to the Environment Agency, to the infrastructure providers, that they've got to bring forward investment. They've got to give us, we're giving them that certainty that they can invest because the development is happening. If you don't have a plan, then it's very much, it's like that day ticket that I mentioned. It's very much, they're in a reaction sort of position where otherwise, if we're presenting the plan, then we can bring them to the table far earlier and have a sort of a chance to have a chat about their funding models and the phasing that they may bring. The other beauty of it is looking at strategic growth as well gives us the opportunity not only potentially just to mitigate the impact of development, but to bring other sort of investment as part of that. So those are some principles.
Thank you, Jeff. So again, as part of the local plan consultation, if you know as residents that the sewage systems aren't where they need to be for large-scale developments, please make sure you're putting that in your consultation responses, because that's how we can lean on those providers in order to make sure we're getting the infrastructure that's required. I'm just going to hand over Councillor Jefferson would like to make.
Yeah, just to say, I'm in a group that's talking to Thames Water. We know there's a problem with Thames Water in Moreton. And when I say we, I mean 2 councillors here. We talked about it, and I understand that both of us are agreed we wouldn't be happy to support something that didn't have a good solution to this problem. Because it's a known issue and it has to be fixed. Lots of you have told us, I've been talking about it for a year. It's a major issue.
We should have to accept development in order to get what we deserve anyway. It is a solution system.
No, absolutely, and you're absolutely right. I won't get on my soapbox about this, but if you look at the condition of the majority of water treatment systems across the UK, they're hugely antiquated, they're not at capacity, and they've not really been improved much since Victorian times. But one of the ways that you could get a better outcome would be through looking at some of this proactively than looking to simply say the system is up to scratch. So there's that causal link, but I quite agree with you. I think the sewage systems in a lot of parts of the country are woefully inadequate. But move us along, if I may. We talked a little bit about design, but the question is, can the planners and elected representatives of CEC reassure the town's residents that the aesthetics in terms of the design, style...
Sorry, you skipped over the bit of the last question.
Which bit, sir?
About the green stuff about the houses.
Yeah, sorry, okay, so yeah, so again, reassurance that the developer, or developers that the council will be working with would be strictly compliant with our green credentials as per the policy.
Yeah, I mean, just to emphasise, in terms of, I think it's the very last bit about the eco-friendly homes and things like that. The council, as part of this consultation, has created a whole new climate change chapter. It's created 16 new policies directly aimed at sort of delivering net zero homes. In fact, the propositions that are contained in there go beyond what the government is promoting. In fact, it's actually challenging some of the written ministerial statement, which is trying to make it more difficult to deliver net zero homes in the district. So we're asking your thoughts. Should we be so bold to do that? The government talks about being net zero ready. We think we should be net zero development full stop. What are your thoughts on that? But again, that has been a key driver for this, and that will be a central component of delivering future growth in the district.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, even though we haven't got those policies yet, and we're working with the old local plan, our adopted local plan, we are delivering houses with air source heat pumps, with solar panels, and indeed only last week we opened at Stockdale's social rented Stockwell's, sorry, I beg pardon, Stockwell's, which is social housing with very green credentials. Prior to that, looking at the bigger development at Chesterton, which was in planning a lot longer ago, we insisted back then that we would get those houses that would be hopefully net zero. But that's what the developer is doing, and that's what's happening. So we've been pushing for this for a long time in planning.
Thank you, Julia. So just going back, because I think this question covers quite a lot of the views. So say, can the planners and elected representatives of the council reassure the town's residents that the aesthetics in terms of design, style and overall external appearance of all new properties granted planning permission in or on the edges of the town will in future not just comply with the mandatory design guidelines and environmental and climate requirements, but will also involve the use of imaginative, creative architects and developers committed to creating original, beautiful, individual homes in which people will be delighted to live, rather than the dull, identical, ticky-tacky boxes which all the recent research reveals bring little joy to the lives of their occupants. There is much which can be learned from European planners and architects, and it is clear that the new buildings are life-enhancing, the local opposition reduces. James.
What's wrong with a ticky-tacky box?
It's a really good series of points that are being made there, and some of you may be familiar with that. We actually ran a consultation about 18 months or so ago, and we had a section on that to sort of talk about design code, and one of the strong messages that came through was this pastiche design. It seemed to be getting on people's nerves a little bit, which I'm not going to give my opinion on that now, but what I would say is that as part of this green to the core, you've got to look at the council's, we've looked at the council's design code and we need to update it. So actually at the moment, on that website that Matt mentioned, we're seeking your views on the emerging sort of ideas and visions and principles for a new design code. And that will be a supplementary planning document that will sit alongside the local plan. And we haven't given it massive sort of position on it at this point in time, but there is potential that we can bring that design code ahead of any future local plan to try and get those sort of positions and those sort of things that Juliette was talking about, and give a bit more certainty, a bit more clarity, and a bit more oomph in the existing plan decision process. But ultimately, this design code is absolutely trying to promote high quality development, but not only just the development sort of at the macro scale as you walk or drive in or walk around. It's also about how you're living your lives within those houses. The pandemic has changed the way, some positive, some negative, but we're noticing more people are working flexibly in a more hybrid sense. So they're now seeking that extra little bit of space to work at home. And it's little things like that that we need to address. Also, we need to ensure that homes are more capable of dealing with wetter weather or more warmer summers. And how do we ensure that people aren't sort of feeling uncomfortable in their home? So it's very much an aesthetic point of view, but it's also getting down to the human sort of dynamics of it as well. How does the home should be making you feel safe, and it should be making you sort of feel happy in your environment.
Thanks. Thank you. So the next question we touched on, but I'll repeat it because I think it's important. The phrase garden village has started to be used in relation to Moreton-in-Marsh's development. Does CEC aspire to bid for government funding for garden village status? Garden villages are settlements of between 1,500 and 10,000 homes. Does CEC envision building up to 10,000 homes in Moreton-in-Marsh? Who wants to take that one?
The answer is no. We don't intend to build up to 10,000 houses. I mean, the proposal in the local plan consultation that based on the evidence we've got so far It's around 1,500 up to 2041.
So why does the document be published on the internet? Because I have to call you out on some things that you said tonight. I believe it was you, Mr. Greenberg, you said that you're looking at around 1,500 houses and it could be higher or lower. So why does the document that you have published as part of the consultation say, and you can read it if you're not sure, it says over 1,500 houses? Have you made a mistake?
Okay, so thank you for the question. Just for the benefit of everyone else in the room, the question there was why does the document say over 1,500 houses as have we made a mistake? James?
Yeah, so I think the rationale for it is that, I'll take a step back actually. We're at the beginning of the process of trying to establish how to distribute growth across the district. We know we've got a sort of a maximum, well, I wouldn't call it a maximum, but a minimum figure that we have to achieve, which is 3,200 homes. Now that can change because we're working to a government figure, which updates that figure on an annual basis. We're not expecting wild changes in those figures, but there can be changes. If in an election, we've got an election potentially coming soon, and if whatever party of whatever colour has housing as a core sort of aim and principle of sort of the next term, then we may see changes in how the formula, in the formulas and creative like that. In answer to your question, whether it's over, it's around. It is around 1,500 at this point in time, but things can change, and they do change. And the policy context can change, and the evidence can change. But just to clarify, yeah, it does say over 1,500, but in practice, it is around 1,500.
It should say around.
That's the question.
The question, okay.
Do you understand the issue that you have though, is that you say, oh, it's around this and it's around that, but then you publish something that says over, so why do that?
So there will be a challenge in getting less than 1,500. And again, I can't be quoted on the exactness of my responses. But
I think
can I just finish? If I could just finish. There will be, if we are to put strategic growth in Moreton, as Matt pointed out earlier, it's going to require at least a link road of some sort. If you're going to go under 1,500 homes, indicatively, back of the fact packet, it's going to be difficult to achieve that infrastructure. So it's going to be difficult to be less than, but that ultimately is what is directing that as a figure.
Thank you, James.
Is that including Spitfire size as well as the one down Emo?
So this, or is that excluding that? So that excludes that. This is new development in addition to everything that we've already got on the book. So the exact figure for the need between 26, well not the exact figure, but between 26 and 2041 is about 7,500 homes. Yeah. We hang on.
8,400. Excuse me guys, can we just let James finish the question and then we'll get back to the questions.
When we count up, and when we add a little bit of flexibility to the supply, because that's what the government asks us to do, we're left with looking to find about 3,300 homes at this point in time. So we've gone well over half the way there in terms of meeting that need. The 8,400 figure is the current adopted position between 2011 to 2031.
Do extra sites still exist on Darmstadt Farm? And it used to be called M3A, M3B, M3C, have you got those in the local plan as well?
So in the adopted local plan, the site that's being developed at the moment, that was one of the sites that was identified as being part of the local plan for future development. There is additional land to the south of that, which is being made available for development. That's not part of the adopted local plan, but if in this local plan going to 2041, it's one of the sites that would be looked at potentially.
Okay, I'm just going to pick up on the second part of that question, which is, does the council intend to apply to Homes England for government funding?
We'd use every opportunity to deliver infrastructure. We know that development is one way to get money, yeah, we would use every opportunity we could to try and pay for things and deliver as much as we could.
Just about, so Homes England are currently supporting the Chesterton or the Steadings application, and they've been used to help pump prime the development, to help bring forward some infrastructure earlier in the process to give some certainty. So if there are opportunities to get central government funding to help support the delivery of infrastructure in the district, then yes, I think the district council would be seeking any opportunity for that.
And that early stage is very important, isn't it, obviously? So, I mean, just as some residents have been saying to me that, you know, could we have some sort of independent assessment of what infrastructure is needed for the town before even numbers of houses are being discussed?
We're doing recently we've commissioned an infrastructure delivery plan which is looking at exactly that thing, not just in Moreton-in-Marsh but across the whole district.
Is that independent assessment would then be able to say, can Moreton actually take this? And it may be no, and it may be yes. Even an environmental assessment right now could be important to determine the actual quality of the environment in Moreton and take it important.
I think what we're touching on here again is really important stuff to put as part of the consultation. If residents feel that an independent assessment regarding infrastructure is required, then let us know that as part of the consultation process. It leads very nicely into the next question, which I think we've covered off, so in the interest of time I'll just summarise it, which is, can CDC confirm it would not proceed with building approximately 1,500 homes as indicated in the development strategy if it could not afford to build, and I'll add in there, or work with partners to provide the additional infrastructure required. So I think you've heard a little bit about that. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Essentially, one of the fundamental principles that we've got to demonstrate when we adopt a local plan is that it's deliverable. If it's not deliverable, then we wouldn't take it to the local plan inspector, but if we have to get our local plan examined in public by a government-appointed inspector, independent, and the inspector will be testing us on exactly that, whether or not the plan is deliverable. If it's not deliverable, it's
Thanks very much. So the next one talks about development strategy in terms of vision and objectives. So the development strategy, vision and objectives document states that CDC would want to reduce car use by developing in areas with better access to public transport, such as Moreton-in-Marsh because of the train station. What data does CDC have to support the vision that the additional residents will use the train rather than drive for work? There seems to be a tension between the aspiration to reduce car use to enable residents to work more locally, places of employment, etc., will all require continued car use. So again, I think the key question there is how are we going to, as part of this planning process, develop, and do you have the data that suggests that it will be able to support that public transport use?
Essentially, it's not just about train use. When we say public transport, it's about all forms of public transport, bus and train. The other thing that you have to think about as well is the aspiration is to reduce car use. So by locating development close to where there are employment facilities, close to where there's supermarkets. So when you say the data, we don't have specific data at this point in time on that, but it's a principle that you locate development close to services, facilities, public transport connections, just so that people don't have to drive. If people want to get into use the train, if their house is near the train, it means they can walk to the train station and go from there. It means they don't have to drive to the next station.
Here's a bit of data for you. How many people actually drove here tonight rather than walk or come by public transport? Who walked?
We'll take a straw poll at the end, because it's a good question. I'm just going to bring in Councillor Jenkinson, who'd like to add with regard to the train station.
Just to say, we don't know the details yet, but I have been told at the county level that there's plans in the neighbouring county for further development along the Garden Village, Garden Town route, and that might lead to improved rail connections. I'm certainly keen to see in the future our rail connected up to the north towards Birmingham, Warwick and so forth, up to that network via Stratford, because that would really open things up. I also know at county level they're really keen on developing better bus routes, and that would be segregated, clear routes that can actually go at speed, and there's various thoughts on that front. The guy who's leading it is very committed to that. Now, we don't know what will happen, but all I'm saying is, depending on what our future here is in Moreton, we'll open ourselves up to more or less chance of that happening.
Thank you very much. Next question is, why is there a framework master plan for Cirencester Town Centre, but not for Moreton-in-Marsh, given the scale of proposed development in Moreton-in-Marsh is proportionately greater? I'm just going to put that on to you.
Yeah, essentially, I've said this a couple of times already, but we're right at the beginning of the process, so we're not at the stage of presenting a plan. We're at a stage of, we believe we know the figure of 3,300. How should we be distributing that? Once we start to alight on that as a proposition, and we've done some of the evidence which starts to indicate that Moreton is that location, or there's a different strategy or a combination of various strategies, we will then start to prepare a plan. Now, if we did continue with the Moreton strategic growth, then we would need a master plan for that development. But I think what is important, and listening to sort of, members, but also residents and other people in and around Moreton, is we could look at a master plan for Moreton and how that development integrates into Moreton and vice versa. So again, this isn't just about bolting growth onto the side and just simply mitigating. It's about what's the added benefit of that, what's the additional benefits it can bring to the town and other sort of parts of the town as well. And also the hinterland as well, the villages, and the impacts on Stowe and Chipping Campden and Northwich as well. But that is absolutely an opportunity for us if we decide as a district council that that is the approach. But at this time, we're not at that stage, but it's definitely an option open.
James, the question was, why was there a master plan for Cirencester and not for Moreton? That was the question.
I've just given you the answer.
You haven't. You just said that you can't do it. You know, it's an chicken and egg situation. The question was very clear. Do you had a master plan for Cirencester?
No. So we don't have a master plan for Cirencester. We have a town centre master plan. The reason for having a town centre master plan, policy S3 of the adopted local plan 2018 makes a commitment to the council, or the council makes a commitment to itself that it will prepare a master plan. The reason for that is it allocates all zones in American language, land within the town centre, about 4 or 5 sites. And the policy says if development is to occur, which it is supported in the town centre of Cirencester, then it should be coordinated. They are principally car park sites in the town centre of Cirencester. So there's a recognition that if you suddenly take a car park site out on the east, what are the implications to the west? It's recognising that the left hand needs to know what the right hand is. So there's a very specific, a very focused master plan for a town centre that focuses on 4 or 5 sites, which we're currently consulting on at the moment. And so that is why we've got that master plan for the town centre. That doesn't really relate to the conversation we're having now, which is about how should we distribute growth. If we do put growth at Moreton and it's justified, then I believe a master plan would be a sensible proposition for the town, for the development. And in fact, that's exactly the approach that the council took with the Steadings development. And a master plan was prepared with the developers, with the community, with the parish council, with the town council in Cirencester, and various other organisations.
Which is why an independent assessment now could be vital for that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a couple more questions from this section, and I'm going to move us on to infrastructure. So I've got some questions about schools, which I know is going to be important to cover up as well. So, one of the main reasons for needing more housing is to provide affordable homes for young locals looking to get onto the property ladder. To make sure this happens, how many of the affordable homes being built will have a Section 106 local occupancy clause attached to the planning conditions?
I spoke to our affordable housing officer about this question earlier, and I'm reliably informed that if it's a rural exception site, which we get a few of, then it's very much connected to the settlement that it's located in. If it's a larger development site, then it's the local connection is restricted to someone in the district. There are some exceptions to that, like if you're in the armed forces or if you're escaping from a really harmful situation, then people can come in from the district. But it's essentially the local connection is to people within the district.
Okay, so again, if that's something which people want more clarity on, again, please make that clear in the consultation and the responses, because I appreciate that's an interesting area that people want to know.
Sorry, can you specify sort of percentage in the answer?
So, a percentage of what's a big size or
the affordable housing that's available?
Yeah.
Is that a blanket in the district, or is there a percentage of?
So I believe on a new development site, if it's a larger, if it's not a rural exception site, which is a type of affordable housing site, it is 100% of people are for local people in the district.
I think the question if the question was what percentage of a development is affordable housing, then the council have got policies on that, and I think that it's
What are you calling affordable housing? What is the cost of affordable housing? Because a lot of youngsters cannot afford the so-called affordable housing. So what we look to do?
Again, getting on the soapbox a little bit on this one, I think the only form of affordable housing we're clearly, and I'll caveat this because I'm kind of putting out of the table otherwise, there are definitions of affordable housing, and it would be a case of working with the developers to understand what the different mixes of affordable housing would be. However, I'm well aware that within the Cotswolds, the social rent element of affordable housing is probably one of the few forms of affordable housing that locals can actually afford. Because affordable housing is a percentage of market value, and when you look at the average values of house prices within the Cotswolds, that's still pretty unaffordable to a large number of people, I absolutely agree. And there's some interesting statistics out where I think the West Midlands Combined Authority actually came up, because you can do this if you're a combined authority, it gives you greater powers. They came up with their own definition of affordable housing, and they set the value of that affordable housing, because even in the West Midlands, the 80% of affordable housing wasn't deemed to be sufficient for locals. So social rent is by far the most affordable element of affordable housing, but it's usual to work with developers to look at that mix of affordable housing tenure. It's probably something we could look to provide some further clarity on, or point people in terms of the website.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's some good information on the council's website already, and I do recommend googling the web browsers and whatnot. We are actually changing or altering or suggesting alterations to the existing affordable housing policy to try and achieve more affordable housing from development. So I welcome your thoughts and your suggestions on how we do that, and then we can make some modifications. So it is a live issue, and we welcome, again, as part of the consultation, please tell us.
Thank you, James. So the last question in this section I'm going to raise, which links to the question we just talked about in terms of the quality of development, working with developers to make sure that the strategic development is of the type and nature that we want. What assurances are there that any planning conditions given by CDC to developers are not incompetently or negligently constructed so as to make them unenforceable as they've been given at Cotswold Gate? So the question there is what the safeguards the council have got around the enforceability of conditions.
Yeah, I mean, enforcement's a challenging situation, so you don't technically need planning permission to go and build something. You can go ahead and do that now. It's a risky manoeuvre to be doing that, and ultimately, if you build in a house, you ultimately want that permission there for you to sell it on. And enforcement is there as a role to ensure that policies are adhered to, and currently at the moment where the council is investing in more enforcement officers to ensure that policies and development are adhering to the the conditions and the permissions that are being sort of granted. But it's an issue that a lot of authorities face across the country. Matt, you want to add
Yeah,
anything else?
I mean, as planning officers, I mean, we have our building control team as well, who go out and do checks and make sure that developments are happening the way they should be. As planning officers as well, with the case officers for applications, and ourselves when we get out into the district, you know, we see developments and think, oh, that doesn't look quite right, and then, you know, I'll go back and talk with the enforcement team, and they'll go out and investigate. But that's one way we deal with it. But if you see something that's not right, let us know, and we'll go and look at it.
Actually, on that, sorry, just before you come in, sir, just to point out, I think we've got some new a new way that you can submit enforcement issues. I don't know if Julia, if you want to pick up on that.
Yeah, we have a form now, pro forma on the website about it. You can fill out and it goes straight to the enforcement team rather than writing a letter to the council, so it should get to them very quickly. So you put down what you think is wrong and it can be checked out. Parish and town councils and councillors also keep us informed. So there are lots of ways of keeping us informed about things.
Thank you. Just to add to that from a strategic perspective, so it's not unusual in garden village approaches for the council and others to work very closely with the developers in a development partnership, for example, and that helps make sure that you're working from the outset with a developer that buys into the principles and the credentials and the benefits the council is looking to deliver. Now again, soapbox moment, one of the disadvantages of ad hoc development, where I often refer to it as developer open season, where developers will be scouting around for bits of land where they think they can have an opportunistic ability to develop. They'll take their chance and sometimes it will go through to appeal. That is the other end of the spectrum. So working closely with developers to agree some of those fundamental principles and the kind of information that will come out of this consultation makes it far less likely that you are going to get unscrupulous developers who don't comply with conditions because they're working with the council and others from the outset.
And I am back as it run out too long, and I'm aware of quite a few garden town programmes nationally that have had that approach with the strategic developers, and they've only chosen to work with developers where they're in the ability to choose developers that reflect the council's views and values.
Well, that hasn't happened at the moment, has it? Because at the moment, developers, we've had no control over the developer after they've built. Yeah, is that correct? You haven't supported any of the residents on the new developments. You've supported none of them against the developers, who all they've done basically is develop and then done a run-up.
Okay, I'll ask
The residents, a lot of the estates, the residents have had problems with the developers in finishing the sites, and when the residents have approached the council, they've hidden in a cupboard and said, it's not our fault, it's the developers. You've not supported them at all.
Thank you. I've understood and heard that, and we do hear this. It's not only in Moreton, but we had an issue where we had 7 years where we didn't have a local plan. And when Rob is talking about developers who are waiting to come and see how strong we are with our local plan, if they think there is a chink that we are not meeting our 5-year land supply, then they come and they put in an application, and we can barely refuse it. They go to appeal and it gets developed. That's why we've on very shaky ground in a lot of our developments, that we have no control over them. When we've got a local plan and a strategy about where our development's going to be, how our infrastructure is going to be, and that all comes from, we've got an adopted local plan now, which is running out in 2026. So actually, if you count the years, it's not very far away that we could be shaky on the numbers because of our 5-year land supply. So those developments are, on the whole, I believe, I don't know exactly which ones you're talking about, but I think a lot of those fit into the bracket of a 7-year period where we didn't have a local plan and we were very much out of control.
Basically, you're saying you're not going to help the existing residents on those sites.
We are working with residents. There's lots of stuff that we cannot do.
Well, Dave, I know the situation. I know the situation. It's really tough.
I'm talking on the whole.
to
And you're
me
not
it
the
sounds
only-
like you're going to try and make these developers pay for the growth in Moreton, the infrastructure in Moreton, and you are going to get beaten by these developers. These developers, unless you're prepared to put the time and effort in to control them, they're going to build and do a run out and leave residents paying for facilities of Moreton.
Dave, the situation is what you've just been hearing from Julia, is that when that development that you're in took place, it did not have the control that we're trying to put in place and maintain. So I know about your situation. I think it's terrible. I think it's
Not just
absolutely
that
terrible.
situation.
What I'm concerned about, and you're not the only one. You're not the only part of Moreton Village.
Yeah,
What I'm concerned about is to make sure that
on your watch. It happens on your watch.
Excuse me guys, come on,
Finish the sites.
let's just move along because
That's very important. It's about handing over the site properly. That's the whole point.
It is.
You do development, but if you can't guarantee the sites are handed over or properly controlled, then all these plans are worthless. That's the whole point.
And one of the benefits of a strategic approach is it gives you more control and less likelihood of developers doing a runner because you're planning it from the outset.
But you have to
You
get
have
your
a
act
bad
right.
track record
You have to
on
get your act
control.
right this time.
Right, I'm going to move us on because I've got some questions I want to raise about schools, and I know this is all really important stuff, but I do want to get through as many questions as we can. So currently 22.7% of the pupils in the primary school are eligible for free school meals. For less academic families, the main sources of employment locally are linked to hospitality and care. Travel distances and associated costs make it unlikely residents will travel to larger towns for minimum or low wage employment. My question related to rural deprivation is how will the current plans, which increase social housing, ensure less academic residents are able to access sufficient employment opportunities appropriate to them within a reasonable commuting distance?
Yes, go on, yeah, well, I'm sure we can do a double act on this.
James, do you want to start us off and then I'll come to that?
Yeah, I think this question actually came up at the event a couple of weeks ago, and I was really impressed with this question because it gets to the heart of why I got into town planning and why we actually have town planning. It's to address and to try and address the inequalities that we have in life, the health disadvantages that some people have over another section of society. And I think in everything that we do, we have to reflect on sort of the issues that are in the town. And if there is an opportunity, whether it's through this development or just through the activities of the district council or other sort of county council, it's about trying to address those deprivations and issues. So I think as part of, given that this issue has come up, and it was quite a good question that was raised, so I think we really ought to be working with the county council and other education providers to say, actually, as part of this, if there was a garden town proposition, we want more technical qualifications and education provision in the north of the district. That's a really sort of solid sort of request, and I completely wholeheartedly support it. The north of the district does deserve that, the south of the district has, and other places like Tewkesbury, Gloucester and Cheltenham. But we can achieve that through looking at strategic and coordinated development. If it's piecemeal development, then it's very difficult. But it's an excellent question that really does get to the heart of the wider plan towns.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, in Moreton, you know, we're looking at providing employment land to help with that as well, and in the local plan, we need to. It's about identifying needs and issues, and how can we fix that through development. So, I would heartily encourage you to include that in your consultation response, so that we can consider it properly.
Just the final point is just to a reflection of the education it's dealt with by the county council, although we work very closely with the county council and their education team to understand needs, and we also speak to local schools and various other sort of education providers, so we trying to get a good rounded position of the type of not only the infrastructure, the buildings, but also sort of what needs to be sort of delivered within those buildings.
Thank you, James. Can I ask another question about schools? I'm also then just going to take the liberty of opening this up to the councillors on the panel as well to get their views or thoughts. So currently children in Moreton-in-Marsh fall under the catchment area for Chipping Camden School, which boasts facilities for pupils such as gym, fitness suite, indoor swimming pool and performing arts centres. Can you promise that equivalent facilities would be provided in any secondary school built in an expanded Moreton-in-Marsh? Anything less than the current facilities available at Chipping Camden would be depriving Moreton-in-Marsh's children, pupils and the families of the facilities currently available to them. So I'll go to James and Matt on this first, and then I'll come to Darren and I'll come back this way to members as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've told you already that one of the key things we're trying to do is cut down on transport emissions, and we know that kids in Moreton at the moment are having to get transported across, mainly to Chipping Camden for further education. It's an issue that we're well aware of, and we've gone to the county council and we've asked, look, you know, how can we deal with this? Because Moreton-in-Marsh, it needs a secondary school ideally, we think. We've been told that to deliver a new secondary school in Moreton-in-Marsh, the number of additional houses that we need to build is around 5,000 on top of what we've already got in Moreton-in-Marsh at the moment. 5,000 additional houses. So that's a lot. Yeah, it's not what's proposed in the local plan, that number of houses, but that's the scale of additional development that's required. Quite what that secondary school would look like, I can't say at this stage, but yeah, I just wanted to let you know that's the scale of development that's needed.
Does that 5,000 take into account the falling birth rates? Because that falling birth rates have a massive impact on primary schools at the moment, and it will be moving through into the secondary sector in the next few years. So that 5,000 could easily be more with the birth rate.
Well, I mean, we rely on the county council as the education authority to tell us what the education needs are and how many houses are required, and that's the figure. So I would have to get back to the county council and ask about that.
It's a good question though, and it's a fair question asked about demographics and changing. And I think when you plan for the future, you have to try and anticipate those changing demographics. We're an ageing population as well, and there's less people living in the same housing stock as well, and there's a whole host of other things. But it's a fair question, but like Matt said, we rely on the education authority and also speaking with local educators as well, local schools,
James,
to give us
clear,
that.
1,500 houses will mean that we will not have a secondary school.
No, well, you will need secondary school provision.
Exactly, but we will not need a secondary school.
No, I think the question, it's this lady's point. I think what Matt is saying is that if we were to curry favour with the county council preparing or delivering a new secondary school in Moreton, they're suggesting that you need growth of, well, we will need growth of about 5,000 new homes.
But we get a road.
Sorry?
But we get a road, because I thought, you saying, I'm finding it quite hard to understand the relative numbers in terms of if we have that many houses, then we're likely to get this type of infrastructure. So you're saying we'd have to have 5,000 homes to have a school if we needed it. But earlier you said 1,500 homes and we'd probably get a road. It doesn't seem to make sense.
So at this stage, there are some things that we know with some certainty, and there are other things that we are seeking questions, much like yourself. So in terms of the school, when we've gone and had a chat with the county council, and we've also had a chat about sort of highways as well, they've been able to give us some certainty in terms of indicative figures of a population of this size would equate to this type of education facilities. In terms of the road, we're not as certain with that, so I can't give you that clarity. But again, I'm coming back to that point again. This is about how we distribute growth, and we're seeking your opinion on that. I appreciate it is difficult to give potentially us opinions on it when you're not given all the facts. It is equally frustrating for us as well, but we have to start somewhere, and we have to sort of put a flag up to see, well, what are your thoughts?
Should it start with the road? Should it start with the infrastructure?
So,
I mean, just to go back to Darrell's point, we need to have a full-blown analysis of the feasibility.
Yeah.
Before you, I mean, you know, this is a mute issue. If the county council says, you know what, man, we can't
So
do
that-
the road round Moreton, we
So
can't do it.
the
Then
question-
is dead. I mean, surely we start with the real problem, which is transport.
So the question for the gentleman was, we need an infrastructure assessment-led proposition to plan making. I don't disagree with you at all on that. What we've started, that is the next stage. We haven't prepared a plan at this stage. We're simply beginning the conversation about how we meet needs that arise in the 2030s, in the middle of, well, not even in the middle of the 2020s yet, getting close to it. The next stage is absolutely, well, what's the infrastructure, what's the capacity, what are the issues, where are the constraints? And as Matt said, we're already starting that process. I think Rob has also said, tell us more about your expectations and your wants. But yeah, I wouldn't want you to go away to think that we'll prepare the plan and then we'll do the infrastructure. But we have to start somewhere about a conversation of, we've been given a figure, we need to start thinking about distributing it. We could have just said no more than that, but we wanted to give you some of the early ideas and thoughts about what is potentially a future strategy, and welcome your views because we get more commentary and more feedback that way.
Thanks, James. Just as I promised I'd do, I'm going to bring in the councillors one by one in terms of whether that's making comments on the schooling or the infrastructure. Darren, you go first.
Okay, Rob, thank you very much. Gentlemen, top, I won't start talking about what the Fossway would be like at about 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. But I will start to say that I'm here to represent the residents' views, and they have expressed the concerns, as everyone knows, about the potential overdevelopment of Moreton-in-Marsh. Which is why they keep saying infrastructure should be discussed first and not house numbers. Infrastructure. That's what I keep hearing. It is in the plan actually, but it's very high level, as to be akin to a wish list and not a plan. Joe Harris, actually the council leader, admitted last night that he would like to be able to say that infrastructure would be in place, but that's sadly not how it works. I'm not sure that that's sad for all, I think it's sad for Moreton actually, which is why I really would like to ask that we can have this independent assessment and feasibility of the town before we go into the next stage, because that will really say to us what we can have, what we have right now, and that will be an environmental assessment as well, fully fledged, and that will give visibility, give clarity, and it will give independence, that you won't feel like you're being told what you need to have. So that helps everybody, both sides of the story.
Darren, can that be done before the 310 houses that in the local plan update?
Should be.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It's not needed.
So yeah, just to reiterate, the sort of once this consultation closes on the 7th of April, we then receive these comments. Hang on.
No, on your thing, it's at the 24th of March. The consultation goes from the 1st of February to the 24th of March.
That's incorrect. It was the 24th. We extended it, and that's an excellent point, well made, and thank you for bringing that error. So thank you very much. I now lost my thoughts on what.
We'll bring Angus in.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So, I know there's a problem with infrastructure in the town. When I campaign, I walk around every single street in the town, and often thousands of houses. I got told again and 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 again, we've got an infrastructure problem. I know, that's what I've been standing on, that's what I've been talking about. And a lot of the problem stems from the fact that we did not have a local plan for years and years and years, and we got ridden roughshod over, and we got left in a situation between control, and that's why you will keep hearing me saying, please can we make sure that we keep a really solid plan, and can we make it even stronger and better than the one we've got. So this is not a plan, this is a consultation about what's important. Every single thing in this questionnaire, every single question is already in my list. every single question I've already put to the officers. And I'm only saying that to say that I'm really glad to see you confirming all of these important issues. They are the things that we have to talk about. But I also want to say, please don't assume that these officers are not on your side. Please do not assume that they are not to be trusted. Please do not assume that they are not independent people. And don't forget that when they finish this plan, they have to put it in front of an independent adjudicator who will test whether they've done their job rigorously and properly, or otherwise it will be thrown out. They are also operating towards Royal Town Planning Institute guidelines for how to do it. They're doing this not as politicians, they're doing this for the best thing that they can do for the town and the district. Now, on the specific problem of the school, I've been trying to understand primary school and secondary school from the beginning. I think that we've got numbers for the primary school that tell us that we need a school, and some of the questions are about can we have one, and others are saying we don't need one, and I really want us to get clarity about that. I really want us to work with the county and make sure that we are sensible, and if we need one, we get one, and if we don't need one, we don't. Secondary school, I would love to see a secondary school here, a really good one. But Chipping is an excellent school.
No, it's not.
Okay. Well, let's put it like this. A lot of people think it is an excellent school. I'm sorry about that. My concern at the moment is I'm not convinced that we are going to be doing a level of development that would deliver us a secondary school. If we can, great. But what I'm concerned about is the incredible unfairness for pupils, especially when they get to 16. I think maybe some of them are technical and some of them we need to sort out transport, and that may be a better route. But I'm really open to trying to explore what's the best solution, and I don't know what it is at the moment. We have to find it.
Thank you, Angus.
Thank you, Angus. I'm just going to say very briefly that I think every town in the district, actually, or in the country, is going to say infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. We all need it. It's not a CDC gift to say that we can make the county come up trumps with it, but we can prove what we need. In terms of schools, I come from Milton Keynes, which before Milton Keynes was built, Milton Keynes is a city. My niece, who lives in Milton Keynes, has to go at 16 years old, either on a train or a bus, for an hour to get to a college. That's from a brand new city. So it's very difficult to actually put hard measures on what we've got in the district. It's not, everybody travels to school, and that's common. We need to have good buses, we need good infrastructure in our public transport, and that's what a good local plan can help you with. Getting money out of the government to provide roads is actually quite difficult.
Thank you, Juliet. I'm going to open this up now to questions from the floor. As I said, I've been for the last half hour or so. We have got a hard deadline of 8:30, so I've asked, please, if you could ask questions that you've not heard, that would be useful for everybody else. And if you could ask a question, please, rather than stating either an agreement or a disagreement with a particular scheme or process that you're involved in, that would be good. So if you could keep your hands up for me, please. I'm going to take the 6 questions I can see in the room, so starting with the gentleman at the front.
If I just take you back to pollution and talk about the elephant in the room, literally, physically in this room, and that is contamination by forever chemicals from past use of firefighting foams. What I'm interested in is an assurance from the council that they will seek independent assessment on the land that is proposed for the 350 homes before any form of discussion takes place beyond that. Because I put this question in and I'm a little suspicious as to why it's not being included in your answers today. Because I know I'm not the only person who's put that question in. I know that other residents and some are in this room and it's not been answered.
More than happy to answer it, Brina. So say thank you. So for everybody's benefit, the
Could I
question-
ask that an officer answers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm just going to repeat the question for everybody in the room that may not have heard it. So the question there relates to historic contamination of this site from forever chemicals associated with the fire college, and what assurances will the council be putting in place to make sure that that is addressed for the 350 dwellings that are proposed for this area? Matt or James? James.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the purposes of this consultation is to exactly raise these sort of comments. So I'm reminded of a sort of a case in Moreton on the, I don't know which side it is now, but it's close to the sewage treatment works. There was concerns about the smell. And so what we did as a result of a consultation like this is we took independent advice on the impact of that to assess that. So if we're getting a swell of opinion going, hang on a minute, this is a bit of an issue, then generally as a council we take that seriously on those proposals. The reason for that is I want to make sure that you're being given assurances that we're taking you seriously on these issues. But also, I think, I can't remember, maybe it was Angus that made this point, that when we're at independent examination, you sir could quite easily come up to that and say, I've asked this question 5 or 6 times now, the council have just, they've been silent on this. This is a very serious issue. You may have been that concerned that you've actually brought your own evidence to bear, whether sort of just personally, or you may be an expert in this field, or you've got consultants or consorting of people to pay for it. So it's really important that we address this, and very, again, because we're at the beginning of this process, if we draw things out, now I'm not going to promise that, yes, of course we'll do it, but if there is good justification to go, hang on a minute, this gentleman's got a point here, then we will take independent
So I have your
advice on
word
it.
from tonight that you will look into.
So you haven't got my word on that, and I was careful not to give you my word, but what I have said is, if there is good cause from one individual or a sort of collection of comments that come together, and when we reflect and go, hang on a minute, that this is a genuine issue, we need to take advice, then the council will need to consider the benefits and the disadvantages of either taking that advice or not taking that advice. But I'm not going to give you assurances that today that that's the issue. We'll take those comments as a really comment well made. And when we review the sort of consultation, we'll then take a sort of an assessment as, right, we know we've got some statutory assessments to do because the government tells us there may be some additional bits of work.
What would happen if your consultation says that you cannot build on this land for these forever chemicals? You've then got to find land for those 350 homes.
That's correct, yeah. That's the issue we face. Now, say, for instance, it was far too polluted, or actually the remedial works make the entire development unviable. That's generally what you would find. Then yes, you're correct. We would then need to go to elsewhere in Moreton possibly, or elsewhere in the district to sort of meet that need.
You have my word that I will keep bringing this. You have my word that I will keep bringing this question to the officers, as I already have, and I'm still looking for, wanting to make sure that we get the evidence, I've asked for the evidence, and I will want to make sure that we have the evidence to make sure it's okay. So you have my word.
Thank you, and I should have said, apologies for any questions that we haven't had a chance to read out tonight, but they are all in the pack that you'll be getting or make available at the end. Lady waiting for here.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask what impact assessments been done, or if any, on the surrounding villages? Because those of us who have Moreton as our hub have found it increasingly difficult over the years to use transport, for example, the station, because there is no parking, no realistic parking, there's no realistic parking in the town for those of us that would want to come and support businesses, or those of us who have taught or teach or work in the local area, or people who are coming through the town to work in the hospital, for example. Is anything being done as part of this? Because obviously that will have another impact on the people who are actually coming from, say, Shipston or any other direction from Blockley. This does have an impact, not just on the town.
Okay, thank you for the question. You're just logging my next victims. Matt, do you want to take that one? So thank you for the question.
Yeah.
So, what assessments have been made in relation to assessments of surrounding villages and the connectivity? Because clearly, if those villages become isolated, it then impacts on the ability to travel between the two. I think it was largely around the assessment of surrounding villages as part of this overall
Yes,
development.
part of the overall package.
As part of the overall
Putting
scheme.
anywhere, it is anywhere, that,
Yeah.
obviously,
So,
Matt? Yeah, I mean, for our adopted local plan, I can tell you what's been done for that and what we'd have to achieve a similar level of assessments to go with that. Like I said, this new local plan, we're right at the start of the process. But for our adopted local plan, yeah, we had lots of things like that. We started off with a study where we looked at all of the different services and facilities in each of the transport connections, and we logged that and worked out what are the most sustainable settlements for growth. We did things like a highway impact assessment, and that also considered not only within Cotswold district and within the settlements within Cotswold district, but also what's the impact of growth outside of Cotswold district having on us. We did.
That's very important when
Sorry.
we're talking about anything in water.
Yeah.
Really don't, somebody who lives here could notice the impact of all the other settlements.
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
area. So I don't know, as part of the consultation, is this?
Yeah, and that's something, we are in regular conversations with our colleagues in Stratford on neighbouring districts and in West Oxfordshire, and yeah, we have a good understanding of what's going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, what we also do, and we work with the County Council on this, we will get transport modelling done as well. It's a hugely expensive bit of work, and the County Council, sort of, I think they call it a Saturn model, and various others, and there's different levels of transport models that one will sort of have a big district level, county level, and then it sort of drills down, and then you can sort of run scenarios through it to understand sort of, is that going to create a rat run through there, or is that going to create a bottleneck there, or does that create a capacity issue there? So it's sort of putting water into a pipe and seeing where it goes. But again, we're not at that stage yet, but in picking up the gentleman in the white shirts at the top there, he's talking about, well, I want some detail on the infrastructure. The next step is we're going to start looking at the infrastructure.
That include the slightly wider areas.
Yeah, completely. We look at the district, we look at sort of the north, and then we look down into sort of Moreton, and then potentially even on that site as well, and sort of how movement, traffic. Yeah.
That's what I really mean, is if you have a site, what the implications are for.
I mean, even right now, when there's traffic lights outside the Spitfire development, everyone's racing through Longborough, Evenlow, even Donington, so, that's very close.
Okay, I'm going to move this along because I've got a gentleman in the blue jacket.
What's the ongoing plan for communication? It's a very quick, sorry.
You talk about effective.
Sorry, let's just take this one. We've got a list, don't worry. There's some method in our madness. Go on, sir.
Sorry, it's just, what's the ongoing communication plan? Because we've got to communicate between ourselves, we've got to communicate with you, we've got to get out, this is an ongoing development plan which will change, not just in what you've got tonight, but will change continuously, hopefully. Therefore, how do we represent ourselves to you on an ongoing basis? I don't mean once every 6 months. And throughout, is it through our own representatives, or are we going to set up some sort of action group which represents the people here, and therefore websites, questions and answers? You've got to take part in those, and what we say has got to be heard and actioned on. The gentleman brought up a point there about after service on sites. What we see is that they're taking them in, because you've got Spitfire Homes setting out traffic lights, which actually cost the tradesmen here hundreds of thousands of pounds, and nobody did anything about it. It wasted a lot of people's time and efforts, and I'm sure you're with us on this, because I hope you are. That can't happen again. Because if we have an action group here, then we will barrack those companies, we'll barrack Thames Water, and we expect your support, and we will support you in turn in doing it.
Thank you, sir, for the question. So the gist of the question is, what ongoing communications are there going to be with the councils, with residents, in order to make sure that this is the start of the process and it certainly isn't the end?
Yeah.
I think it's a really important point, probably one which we haven't got time to cover, but we're going to make a stab at talking to you about some of those ongoing communication channels, because you're absolutely right, it does need to be an ongoing process involving the views of residents. Now, do you want to start off? So what communications are already planned and what might we be wanting to do in the future?
Yeah, I mean, well, we have our local plan consultations ongoing at the moment, and we're expecting to get a lot of responses to that, and it'll be a bit of time to sort of process those responses. So following that, we do a response report about what's been said, what action we're going to be taking in the future. That will help us to work up to the next stage of the local plan, where we will come up with a more firm idea of what the development proposal is. We will also be, as and when evidence comes up, we publish that on our website so that it's all in the open, so that we've got that to hand. There's also, well, we're doing this Moreton area group as well, which...
do you want me to get that? Just before I get onto that point, I think, just to remember, planning operates within a sort of political framework, so you've got your local ward members that you can go speak to on these sort of things. You've also got the town council, who also represent you at a local level as well, and they're well placed to sort of provide that. We've got county councillor as well that can sort of you can speak to on these things. The council also in January, when it agreed to this consultation, it's part of the proposition was to create a Moreton working group, and we're working on that at the moment, so there'll be representatives. And that it can't include everybody in the town. I'm really sorry to sort of announce that. It just we couldn't sort of facilitate something like that. But there will be key representatives on that will help again and give you another channel within which to sort of give feedback, and that will be well, we're working on sort of the mechanics of it at the moment. But again, it's another commitment by the council, and it was a cross-party sort of proposal that came from Overview and Scrutiny, I believe.
I proposed it.
Yes, you proposed it. And yeah, that again gives you some, hopefully some comfort that we're not just doing the bare bones on this, we're not just doing the statutory sort of requirement, that we're going above and beyond that. Now, there may be additional stuff that needs to happen over time, and if we did really sort of start to rally around this idea of sort of strategic growth in Moreton, and then we start talking about master planning, then that brings a whole host of other communications and engagement with it. So it's absolutely core to what we do. I mean, just to pick up on Amos's point, we are working at a local authority because we want to do good for the local community in the areas that we live and work. We've deliberately chosen not to have a career on the other side, the darker side of town planning, and we have a sense of sort of wanting to do good. But we work in an imperfect system and an imperfect world, and I don't have a magic wand with everything, but we're doing our damn best we can to support you and to listen to your concerns.
Thank you, James. I'm going to move on. So we've got another 5 questions listed, which will probably be about our max, I'm afraid, because we are running out of time. So, Alison, your question.
This thing's a conversation that's unfurling. You talk about effective amounts of houses that need to be built in order to service an expanding water. So 5,000 for a school, I don't know how much for a road, but look at what the air balloon roundabouts costing. I mean, I know that's big up, but you've got to start from scratch. Where do you get the figure 1,500 from?
It's essentially from what land is available and potentially deliverable around Moreton. We periodically we do what's called a call for sites. We've got one ongoing at the moment, and people tell us what land is available. We then assess it. So we can't go and develop land that isn't available for development, essentially.
You can compulsory purchase, can't you?
Sorry?
For strategic sites, I thought you could compulsory purchase?
That is a power that is open. I mean, as a council, we haven't compulsory purchased anything for at least 20 years, if not longer. But yeah, it's something that should be avoided at all costs, really. It's a horrible process.
Are you asking for more development?
No, I'm saying void. So Kendall was ruled out because no one in Kendall wanted to sell any land, but if it was strategically beneficial for the entire district, would it not be beneficial for the
Can I answer
Yeah.
the question on a compulsory purchase? You're completely right. There is a power open to the district council. Often it is used to unlock a piece of land as part of a wider part of it. Normally it's used in highway to sort of facilitate an extra bit of land to facilitate, I don't know, a roundabout, something like that. What it would never be used for, or I'm not aware of it being used, is to buy huge chunks of land for development. This is a district council, it's not a metropolitan borough council that has millions of pounds, although not many metropolitan authorities have millions of pounds these days anyway. The system, and again, this comes back to my point I was making to the gentleman down here, that the system is imperfect in the sense that it requires land to be made available to us in the first instance. So essentially, what we found in most of our settlements, certainly the larger settlements around the district, you won't be surprised to hear that land has largely been made available all around the town and the villages. So we don't struggle for finding land around our towns and villages. But in answer to your question, yes, sorry, yes, you answered the question though, didn't you?
Can I just say, in response to what you said, 1,500 houses is piecemeal. It doesn't serve any purpose for us in Moreton. It's plucked out of the air. It's non-strategic, or something appears to be from what you've been saying. I just feel...
Okay, and that's a comment that you can make to this consultation, and that's it's a respectable point to make.
Okay, I'm going to move this on. I've got the gentleman behind the lady who asked the question earlier. Okay, thank you. The gentleman at the back with the turquoise shirt.
Yes, thank you. I would like to meet Councillor Corps after the meeting. I have a question, and also by means of informative title. We live on London Road, right by the Shirestone Monument. On a related matter, we commissioned a number of reports, expert reports on flooding and traffic. Quite recently, within the last 12 months, what became obvious is that the environmental agency was working with extremely outdated maps, and we had to generate our own modeling because the area gets flooded. Now, that is a low point, and the fire college stands at the relative level above that point. How do I get this information across to the planners? I volunteered this to Councillor Jenkinson, but I haven't had a reply. I'm sure that the gentleman was busy, perhaps. But I met Matt Britton at the last meeting, and I thank him for his time. How do I get this information and these expert reports, because it can help inform your processes?
Matt, you just for the benefit of everybody else, just want to repeat the gist of the question and answer it for me, please.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, from our point of view, all information is good information. And yeah, I think when I met with you, I gave you my personal email address, or my work email address. But yes, normally in a local plan consultation response, that's the one that we've got that we set up. It's like a survey and stuff. But we also do say, you know, if you've got something that doesn't fit in with that, send it to ideally our local doc plan at cotswold.gov.uk email address. We'll be able to pick it up then, have a look at it, and take it from there.
Just to complete, the way we became aware was the hydrologist that we retained does work for the environmental agency quite often. He does his modelling for them, and it is a well-known fact that they do not have the funding. We're in flood zone 1. That's not exactly the case with some surface water, and we're at the low point, and we stand below the relative level. So that's just one item of interest at mine.
What essentially we would do with, sort of to take your question a little bit further, now you've given it to us, what will we do with it? We've got our sort of retained hydrologists, so consultants, who do flood risk assessments. They do sort of what's called a level 1 and a level 2. A level 1 looks at the whole district as sort of a macro level, and then a level 2 would then start to look at sort of the sites, but also the town as well, and look at the cumulative effects. What we would do with your information, sir, is to feed that into our hydrologist to say, hang on a minute, there seems to be a discrepancy with EA maps or other existing data. This gentleman here is providing what appears to be some live information on the realities of the current situation, when we would seek their opinion on that.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I'm going to move this on because we've got 4 questions, and then I'm going to draw a line under it, I'm afraid, because we're running out of time. So the lady...
One very quick question and one comment. We really welcome the fact that you're going to give us some more feedback and we can contribute more to this consultation, and it doesn't just end on the 7th of April. But can I plead with you, please, to simplify your communications? I'm a communications professional, and to expect good, busy people to wade through 300 pages and actually understand the detail and contribute meaningfully to it is very difficult. Could we please have summaries, concise, well-written, clear summaries, and only one way to get onto your website, not a multiplicity of them? Second point, a very quick one. We've heard about the working party about Moreton and its plan. I'd be very interested to know a little more from you about how it's to be constituted and how residents can be represented on it, and when it's going to start work.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. I mean, I'll often beat these guys over the head and say use plain English, not planning language, because it's very easy to using planning language day in, day out, that it just goes over people's heads. So noted, and I think we'll take that away and look to whether we can produce some sort of executive summaries that provide some of that high-level information. So the main question was, what does the Moreton working group look like? And I know it's very early days and we've not given much thought to that, but do James or Matt want to add anything around what that might look like?
Just in terms of the simple way, thank you for that. We need to do better, completely accept that. It is technical, it's horrendous for us as planners. We need to do better than that, and I will work with members, with Matt, to find better ways of communicating, so be assured on that. In terms of the constitution of the Moreton Working Group, there is a terms of reference that was agreed in principle, well, it was agreed, not in principle, but absolutely was agreed at council. The task that's on my desk, and I'll be, probably not this evening now, but certainly in the next few days, is to work with sort of senior officers and senior sort of relevant board members to work that up, and yeah, we can then communicate that effectively with yourselves and residents.
What we can also look to do is let's put a link to that on the website, and again in a very obvious way, so somebody can see those terms of reference without having to wade through lots of pages. Thank you for the question. Gentleman at the very back who came in earlier, but did you want to raise another question?
Yes, slightly related. At the very beginning of the presentation, there was a few options of how the local plan was devised, and there was a sort of, we could do it this way, we could do it with like the settlement hierarchies, we could have dispersed settlements. That seemed like quite a political decision, and I would have thought the makeup, the key, a direction of the local plan, I think it was like option 1, 2, 6, and 7 something. The choice not to do dispersed settlements and do piecemeal, not piecemeal, but sort of scatter the housing across the development would mean you didn't have such a cumulative impact in one location. And also, I actually grew up in the Rissingtons. The chance of being able to live in a small village very difficult. So I've actually been forced to move to Moreton. Not like, and I live here now. I'm a younger resident compared to many. But I've been pushed out of the village that I grew up in. And actually, why moving away from villages to towns? The Cotswold has always been a scattered village settlements throughout the district. We're basically getting in the south Cirencester, in the north Moreton, and basically you just need second homes in the middle.
Okay.
That's political decision. Should it have been a referendum to decide which actually of those options could have been addressed and taken forward?
Okay, so just the question is why a garden village approach rather than incremental on some of the periphery villages?
Yeah, so our adopted local plan, it already includes a policy that allows small-scale development in our villages, our non-principal settlements. It's not the intention to change that. What we do have in our local plan, the strategy for future growth, when you're looking at these, this big 3,300 number, how we develop and scatter it across how we distribute it across the district, one of the key things we have to look at is how do we reduce transport carbon emissions and car journeys, improve people's health and well-being. If you located just a little bit of development, Cotswold district is a really rural area. If you located development, you know, in a little bit in each village, that's going to create lots of additional car journeys, far more than you would do if you located it close to a place that's got good access to services, facilities, employment provision.
The FOSS, so I work in Stoke, live in Moreton, FOSS ways, you know, by putting it so far in the north and south, we're encouraging more people through the FOSS ways. So still on the road, I don't know the long-term traffic mashing, and I know there's some comments that says that we need to have that infrastructure plan. You know, that's outside of your control in terms of highways. But it seems like incorporating all of the employment, the non-employment, the housing in the north and the south, people are still going to have to travel. You know, if you're having a baby, you've got to go quite a long way. And you know, if you're going to encourage lots of affordable housing with young people, so where are they all going to have babies? Where are the hospitals? You're going to go through quite a long distance.
Matt, literally 30 seconds on that.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, in short as well, I mean, yes, there's like, you know, proposal for potentially 1,500 in Moreton, but that's not to say that these other principal settlements around the district, we've still got to achieve that 3,300 number. They're going to be looked at as well to provide some additional growth.
Thanks, Matt. I'm sorry, let me just move this on because I'm desperate to get these other two questions in, and then I mean there's an opportunity to come back. Lady on the end there, second row.
So it links kind of to what you were just saying, is I know you spoke about garden levies, it's up to 10,000. I know you're not proposing to go up to 10,000, I'm not saying you are, but you said around 1,500, but if that goes a little bit over, and you've talked about other scattergun private developments like the Spitfire that are already there, if by stealth, over the next decade, 2 decades, the numbers do rise, but they're outside of your local plan, how joined up is your communication going to be with the other developers if they're outside of your plan? Are they allowed to develop outside of your plan? When it goes to, I think you said it's an independent appraisal, once you've created everything, you then have to submit it. Do they have to do the same, and then they're automatically rejected? Because if Moreton is at the threshold, whether it's an independent person like Daryl said, or you have your own review, whatever that is, if that is over that, what I'm worried about is independent kind of responsibility, where you guys will turn around and say, well, we know that Moreton can only take, say, 1,500, so we've only built that and not increased the infrastructure, but then another Spitfire can come along and do the same, and we all end up losing out, but it's not technically your fault.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. The principle is, if we have a plan and it's adopted and it identifies how that growth is going to be met, any application that comes in that is not in conformity with that plan, this district council will fail it, will refuse it.
Right.
What the importance of a plan does as well is developers won't waste their time on it as well. Because they know that the local plan is up to date. The rules are that you're given these days sort of a 5-year grace. They've changed the way that, in terms of being able to challenge an adopted local plan. But in a sense, that's having a plan gives you that security. If we don't have a plan, then essentially what you've described happens, and then we're on the back foot, and then we're trying to figure out the cumulative effect of all of that. And ultimately, that's why we're coming to you today and in the month to say we need to start thinking about tomorrow today.
So why, I appreciate all of that, I really do. Did you then speak to Spitfire? Did you include that in your numbers? Because they're a massive development, or want to be.
Speak up, could you?
Yeah, so the question is, did the council liaise and engage with Spitfire, because that could be a big development, and was that considered in the numbers?
I mean, the Spitfire site to the south, the Dunstall Farm site to the south of Moreton, that is in the adopted local plan. That forms part of all the assessments that are going on now. That will need to be done in the future. For the same thing was done for that site, and then that was just in the adopted local plan. Spitfire weren't. I think in fact they were actually the house developer there, but there's a further stage once you get to the local plan that Spitfire then have to submit a planning application which sets out all of the detail of it, including how it's going to be built out, what the impact is going to be on the local highway network when it's under construction and things like that. So there's a further layer of detail that goes on once the local plan is adopted.
And that's where the council's local plan policies kick in. It may say you need an extra environmental report, or you may need a noise report, or and all these other, you need a transport assessment. So then the applicant is incumbent on them to demonstrate how this is a compliant development. Just because we allocate it doesn't mean automatic permission. It's not a green tick. It has to go through all the policy hoops and requirements that the district council have set out.
And enforcement while it's being constructed.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, James. Right, final question, please, and then I'll put it forward to a close.
Thank you very much. I lay my cards on the table. I'm a district councillor. When you were talking about biodiversity net gain, and I just think it would be lovely to have a marker which was quality of life net gain, because a lot of the things we're talking about to do with the quality of life. So I'm sure the piecemeal development that's happened in Moreton means that it takes you longer to make your journey. It may be that you have to wait longer to see a GP. You know, there are problems with sewage and water and stuff like that because of some of the piecemeal developments that have taken place. Do you think that the infrastructure improvements suggested would actually improve people's quality of life, would make it better to live in Moreton and not just be keeping things as they are, and just by providing enough to mitigate for the extra houses, but would actually make it possible to solve some of the infrastructure problems that exist already, not just to go on the...
Yeah, it's a really good sort of point to make. I mean, ultimately, that's the point in theory of the planning system. It is about sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and as far as we can get at the top of that, and improving the quality of life. We plan our towns because we want to live in a comfortable way, in as enjoyable way as possible. I think, again, it's difficult to speak to the specifics here, but I think what you start to do is, again, if we think about a master plan for the town, it's sort of, well, what are the visions, what are the principles, what are the drivers for accepting growth? If we were to accept growth, it's on our terms, these are our terms. Quality of life and addressing other matters as sort of really sensible propositions, and then we can start to tease out, well, what is it in Moreton that is, unpack that quality of life in Moreton, what's it about?
Whatever we do has to make the town a better place.
Thank you. I'm going to give the last word on that one to Councillor Lake, and then I really am going to
Thank you. Well, apart from being district councillor, Lewis is also on our planning committee, so she's very au fait with planning. But what we're doing as well, and I think it was alluded to earlier, is about our design code, and we're doing a survey, and we are asking people how they want their houses and their developments. And having a development, if you've got a good house and it's safe and it's warm, and you've got a healthy lifestyle, you can afford to live in it, you also want to be able to have, you know, neighbours, connectivity around those developments, and this is all part of our design code, and it's a really important part. We've got that design code in our adopted local plan right now, but we're looking for further evidence. So please fill in those surveys.
Is the intention to have one single plan, one developer? Sorry, it's quite important, I think, or smaller developments that, you know, not 1,500 like one developer like Spitfire. I think that's quite important, how we might come about.
Essentially, it's unlike the site in Cirencester, that was just one landowner. In Moreton-in-Marsh, the sites around Moreton, there's lots of different land ownerships. However, it's really, really important that although there's lots of different land ownerships, there's one coordinating plan for it.
One just to sort of your point on that, even on the sort of the steading side, there are multiple. I think there's 2, if not 3, developers on that, and then that helps to sort of ensure that it is delivered. In fact, we get questions at examination: how many developers are going to be delivering this, and what's the phasing of that, and all those sorts of things.
The designs will be different as well if you do not just one. I'm an architect, so I feel like smaller architects, a few different things. Yeah. They can better piecemeal, you can patchwork, Cotswold styles, you're not.
Make sure you make those comments, it's really important.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm
afraid we've run out of time. If you would like to raise any questions, please do respond in the consultation, but I'm afraid we're out of time tonight, so thanks very much indeed, everybody, for coming along.